Hey guys, welcome to the MC Anime Podcast. We cover anime, geek culture, Japanese aesthetics, and Asian studies. We are a multi-fandom podcast, and you can expect to hear topics in your favorite hobby or fandom activity potentially. You can find MC Anime on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Also, please check out mcanimepodcast.com, our website. Furthermore, stay tuned in for another episode.
Welcome to another episode of MC Anime. MC here. And today I'm back with a special guest, Mac. How are you going, Mac?
I'm okay. And was just chilling. And that's about it.
Okay.
How about you? How are you?
Hanging in there.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, This dude literally called me as soon as I messaged him to do the interview, and he's like, I'm here. Where are you? It's like, I'm coming. But I'm here regardless. That's how it happened. I got summoned quicker than expected. So hey, it all works in the way it works. But anyway, before we get to today's topic and episode, MC Anime can be found on podcast directories like Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. You can find us on our website www.mcanimepodcast.com, and you can support us on Patreon at Blog MC Anime. Join the MC Animator community where there's like all these different tiers and promotion type stuff to join and be part of it. Further ado, today's episode is the open source software in the public sector. I brought Mac back today as a featured podcast guest to talk about that subject because his forte is programming. So he can relate and give some inside scoop that we don't originally have.
Yep. So, what are we gonna start first? Let's go.
Is open source software utilized in the programming sector first?
I mean, open source by itself is like the program, the code, the availability of the code. Being for everyone and being available, for anyone can just use it and copy, I guess, and reuse it up to the license agreement that was put in there by the guy, who made it. And yeah, let me think. Can you repeat the question?
How do we utilize open source software in programming?
How do we utilize it?
Yeah.
The utilization is pretty basic. The user just uses it and that's it. There's no more than that. But the open source is just used mostly by the developers. The idea of use because the developers are the only ones benefiting from this model. And,
okay.
The open source is just a model, for decentralizing the software development. So usually you have the corporations which make it private, and they centralize the code and the code execution and how the servers work as well. Everything is centralized to some structure. Usually they try to decentralize the way how it spreads around the world, the services. But as for open source model, the development becomes more like whoever wants to join in the development, that guy can join, So that's why it's kind of a better model because it can be more secure usually, because everyone that looks at the code is like, oh, there's a problem there, so they can just add their own modification. And there's advantages to being open source. A lot of those are advantages and disadvantages.
Okay.
You might think that there are no disadvantages to being open source. The code is available everywhere and everyone can use it. And what
is the definition of open source software? Like what's
Definition?
the cut and dry, bone and gritty definition, how you define it for people to understand what it actually is.
I mean, the open source is represents the source code that is made free for everyone to use and redistribute. That's the bare bones of the saying, yeah. And as I said before, it's also a model. It's mostly a model of decentralizing your software.
Okay.
Yeah. It generally is used in software development. I don't think there's I mean there might be use cases in real life. It's like saying communitary work in a sense, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right way of saying let's say a whole town just makes one statue. I guess that's also open source, so like making a public what's it called in a sense public asset. They put their efforts in making a public asset in a sense. Yeah. That's kind of, I guess, the definition. So what do you want to know more, kind of?
Well, so a public asset. Mm-hmm. What is a good example of a public asset with open source software?
Public asset, like I don't know. God.
Well, what was an example of it? What is an example of like
a public asset? Wait, I actually can explain. I guess that's a computer. That would be a computer, right? With a Linux system in a sense. Operating system. That would be the definition, I guess, if the way you asked it, because a public asset would be just any computer available for everyone to use, right? And built by, I guess, people, not just one, and they build it for free, I guess, or not. It depends on the model they use, and made it available for everyone to use, but it just has, I guess, Linux operating system, because software, open source software, you said. That's that would be the direct meaning of what you said, the question you asked.
True. And how does open source software benefit the public sector? Because that's what this main conversation is about.
Can I ask you, what do you mean by the public sector? Who is the
public sector? Available for the public to use at any given time.
Yeah, but who is that public? I mean,
we're talking public. Like, if it's made public, then anyone on the internet can get the open source software code and use it for whatever means they want.
Oh, so you mean like Tesla, in a sense, right?
Yeah. Oh. Everything they put on it, it's fair game for people to use and change the code. A lot of times, open source, they have to change the code, right? Mm-hmm. They can't directly copy it, right?
Okay, I got it. So I guess first I could say let's say a few examples of open source softwares which works in that method. There's many of them. I'm gonna start with the most known one, which is the Linux system itself, because and that in itself is the first system that followed this method of how to implement with what's its name, the community in a sense. Yeah. So everything built in Linux is, in a sense, built by a community, but also some private sector also interfere, because there's so much, and the utility it gives is so much that even they help with its development in a sense.
Okay.
But by saying that someone holds the code, in a sense, I mean, some people actually could hold the code, because there are systems which follow the same Linux format, but they made it a private sector. I guess that would be like Red Hat Linux.
Oh, okay. So, with the access to the public sector, what are some things that we have to... What can people do with that software? And it can actually be a big mistake if they have that software.
Big mistake?
Let's say they use that code and they use it for a malicious intent, like a crime. They take the code, they exploit the code and use it in a crime. How does the open source software, whatever company made it, go about that code if it was used in a malicious conduct?
I mean, I don't think there's anything they can do, because the open source code, when it's made, right, it's made for a purpose and made by people, and the purpose usually might contain like a larger use case a larger use case, but they cannot oversee all the, I guess, the negative usage of it. Because I mean, they could, but it's hard, and those are called usually exploits and the bugs, I guess. And and sometimes when, I guess, they find a way of exploiting those software they made in wrong ways, what they do is create an issue and patch it with by removing, in a sense. They just remove it, They remove that method of exploitation, and that's about it. Or they modify it so you couldn't do it as easily as possible, because some things are too useful, and you can't just remove them, in a sense. Like, let's say if you were given a way to scan all the addresses on the internet, right? That's available for everyone, and everyone can scan, and kind of, in a sense, if they find your IP, I guess they could also attempt to do some malicious stuff. I don't know in what way. There's many ways and many exploits to be done on that, but that's the best they could do. Like, they could scan and monitor you, in a sense.
True.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone uses this method, so nobody can stop it. Like, an agreement, it's like OpenSea agreement, like you have open water and everyone can shoot at themselves if they are behind the borders, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I guess I think that was the agreement. I don't know. I'm not sure. I forgot.
True. What is like one advantage of open source software and the public having access to open source software?
I mean, there's many advantages.
Well, let's just name one, and then we name a disadvantage, and you go back to advantage.
The biggest advantage is just that everyone can just take the code. If they don't like the software, they could modify it themselves. They can't write their name on it, of course, as their own. They can't say that they made the software unless the license allows it. There's no license. They could just rename themselves under it. But they could just modify, add a new feature, and that's it. It works, and they're free to they are free to redistribute that format, that version, and the others can also modify that version depending on how the license, again, they made it, because somebody at some end could just say, I don't want others to modify this code, so they could just say, I put an X license and that's it.
All right, let's say someone made open source software. Could someone who's used an open source software, could the modified version be licensed to that company? You have the base open source software, and then you have the modified based on the open source software that they borrowed. Can they trademark that modified version for their own company, or can they only trademark the modified portion?
I mean, they could. They cannot modify everything of it. It depends, actually. Like, how should I say? They could use that base as their own, right? But I'm not sure. It depends, on the license agreement. Like, whoever made the code available always puts a type of license, So if they say that the code cannot be cannot be monetized, without the agreement of the creator, in a sense, because there's always a creator of a project. So it's up to him usually, like how the project continues. He could decide the whole fate of the project, I think, but it depends. Because if somebody were to change the whole piece of the whole licensing agreement, they could remove their part of the code from that software, and the one who owns the software just cannot do anything about that if he wants to remove it. So there's always like bits like this which make the decentralized method of programming or development a bit iffy, because somebody made a change, then they can ask to remove it, in a sense, and there's not much that could be done until somebody else comes and re-implements the same thing, I guess, just in a different way, or something like that.
So let's say a company takes a modified open source software they found that they like. They like it as the base for their project. They modify it. How do you stop that company from using the open source code for financial gain?
Oh, you can't stop them. I mean, I'm not sure you can stop them from that. If the actual licensed first project, like the project they copied from, if that project says that it cannot be monetized, I guess you then fire them in the court. You just move this process to the court, and they have to decide.
So basically, in the initial licensing of the code, if there's a clause saying no monetization, then that's the only way that you can get a company in court by using it for financial gain, other than the means that the code is designated for.
Yep. I think in that sense, unless there is an agreement between the two parties, there's clauses, like in laws, there's always ifs. So that's an if, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know how much that goes deep.
Okay. So let's say you're the program. You made an open source software like 10 years ago. This company comes along, 10 years later. They take your code, modify it, and now they're making money. And you found out they're making money for it. And then what is your legal ramifications to take them to court if they're making money on your code, on your open source code, open source software?
First I actually have to find it. I actually don't know, man. This is too hard. I'm not sure about the procedure here, because first you have to demonstrate that it's stolen code. So I'm not sure how that is demonstrated.
Okay, so
I'm not sure. I don't know how you make the proof of that. The only proof of the
when you prove, for example, open source code has an identity digital footprint, and if the company used that code, that same digital footprint is still there. They can't get rid of it.
Yep. That's the only way, I guess, you could actually make it.
So if
you put some kind of watermark or footprint, that tells you that this software is yours, or something like a backdoor, in a sense, I guess.
Okay.
And that's the only way you could demonstrate that or prove that it's your code. I think that's the only way, because if and also there's also a funny thing, like if they take your code, right, that means also the bugs, and the exploits that exist in your program, in your software, that you made, are also available there, which means you can attack them, in a sense, by using those exploits and bugs.
True.
So it's a double-edged sword, in a sense. Usually, there's not much you can do against that. Just in a sense, just pray that it doesn't happen. So or pray that the project is enough developed to be self-sustainable. Because by self-sustainable, I mean in a decent version of use case, something like that.
All right. So is it
Like,
common in the licensing of open source code to have like a clause saying no monetization, no financial gain is just supposed to be used from this code?
God,
Is that like common in licensing? Like
I
no monetization, no financial gain.
actually, I need to review those licensing because
Oh,
every time you make you make a project, you always review the licensing because it's hard to remember all of the licenses. There's so many of those, and God, no, for real, there's too many of those. Let me check a bit. I think I can find one. Yeah, there's so many licenses. I'm not.
true. And also, okay. Well,
Yeah,
also with the licensing, there's like different formats, different ways to do it, and the variations in the licensing can cause like a variation of different open source codes used for different means. So I can understand the monetization or no financial gain clause can be implemented or not. But it'll be interesting to know if that's like a common feature or is that like a very specialized licensing agreement.
It's a specialized licensing agreement because let's put it this way, like let's if you used GitHub, I guess the moment you put a license, right? So wait, how should I explain this? So GitHub is like a time management in a sense, time file management system. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it better. Anyway, so every time, a file is a file is saved there. Its version, I mean, you like that time. At that time, it has that license. So the moment you set a license, right, to your project there, from that point of time, in that project, that license is gonna be that one until it's changed, I guess, by the actual developer. So everyone taking reference to the code, in that time, they can just take it and modify it up to that license. They could also take any version after it, as long as it maintains the same licensing. So they could just take any version, modify the way they want up to the agreements of the licensing. Once the licensing is changed, they cannot they have to agree to a new license, but they can still use the previous versions. Do you understand?
Okay.
So once a new license is set, that let's say it tells tells you cannot do another thing or something like that, it limits you, you can still use the previous versions because they maintain a different licensing there. So
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of how it works. Up until then, you can use that code. After it's a new license, you can use that new license if you want to, and copy from that project, but you have to agree to the newest license and modify it according to it. But if you don't want, you can use the previous license, and modify according to that one. But you cannot steal from the other project, kind of. I mean, theoretically you can kind of steal because it's not theft. It's I don't know what is the right word. It's not theft if you just take a reference. You get it.
True.
So but so what else would you like to know?
Okay, so what's the disadvantage in the open source sector and the public having access?
Oh, the disadvantage. Okay, so let's say I'm gonna talk about the advantage of the private sector, and then I'm gonna come to the disadvantage, right? So let's say the private sector, has the software developed, and it has a point of view, like it wants the software to end up at the X point, and have some features it needs. It has a deadline usually for creating those features, and it sets some expectations. Now, if you look at the open source, like the public sector, the problem here relates to deadlines. Yeah, there's no deadline when anything will be developed. Yeah. There's no set view, like there's no end of a view, kind of. It's more like everyone, or a group of people have to agree to some design for, a way of making this, developing the program. The other problem, there's no warranty that if something happens to your system, I mean, not system, but hardware, or actually, and system, you use that open source software, So if something were to happen to your computer or system, while you're using that software, it's not their problem usually. I mean, you are using the software. We said that we don't have a warranty, and whatever happens on your system stays on your system. It's your deal, kind of, So there's nothing like that, you can break your system, you can break your PC, it's up to you. But they usually tell you that one, because they don't want, the open source developers don't want you to break your system if something in case. But if that happens, I mean, it's a pity, You can't do it. You can't oversee all the problems. Even the private sector cannot oversee all the problems. So that could happen, even there. But nobody's gonna pay you money if you break your PC. There's also a problem that you don't know how much money it will cost, because a project, because let's say you have an open source server, some kind of way of making servers. So it doesn't tell you how much money you might spend on how the service works, like the server works. Let's say the developers created that system, and they made it use some functions that are overly expensive for the CPU and the memory usage, in a sense. So they don't tell you how much costs are gonna be in there. No. There's also other disadvantages, because when the private sector makes a software, they always have a targeted hardware user. Let's say let me think about it a bit. Let's say somebody makes a software for Windows, right? They cannot guarantee that it will work under Linux in some circumstances, or they cannot guarantee that it will work also on Apple OS systems, so that's also it's not it doesn't work on all systems, in a sense. They don't guarantee you that one, and they don't guarantee that it will work specifically on your machine, like a physical machine, because sometimes there are some hidden features on each machine, and on each CPU. They have hidden features which make you unable to use some functions, in a sense, some API. They make it unable for you to use those functions. So you end up with some errors on your system. So and I guess usually also there's another problem, I guess. There's no documentation, maybe, because if somebody, I mean, it's not the problem nowadays, I think, but usually, when somebody creates an open source software, right, they have to dedicate time in order to write the documentation, right, if they want it to be understood by everyone. But they could also not write it, and you could be they could tell you, good luck, you have a PhD in computer science, and you will know how to find a way. May the god of assembler be with you. That's a joke for IT.
True.
All right, well, let's go back to another advantage of open source software. What's another advantage that the public having access to it could benefit other projects in the digital sphere, intellectual property, and any like infrastructure utilizing that open source software?
So first of all, this project, usually the open source projects are much cheaper in a sense by much cheaper to develop because everyone comes there with their ideas, and sometimes they come for free, they just want to improve the system, so that's a good idea, and it gets improved easily, and because if somebody comes with a good idea to, let's say, I don't know, to Windows, they tell you that this is a good idea and it needs to be implemented. They can just say, no, thank you, we'll not implement that. But here, like, they could actually implement it, because it depends, actually. Microsoft, let's say, would disagree usually because of their market strategy. But here there's no market strategy, and you can implement whatever hits you in the head. So that's a good advantage, because there's more features involved in that. Usually the open source software have more features. So I'm gonna I can give you an example of a good open source software, which you also know. It's Blender. So Blender is a cool one. I don't think it will ever be going
Wait,
to the
isn't
private.
Blender used for like VR chat and stuff?
Blender is used for anything, I think, anything related to the 3D.
Yeah, okay. I was so crazy because the other day I was talking, people are going to like the different VR, virtual reality chat, and they were using like the different 3D animation, and Blender was actually mentioned, funny enough.
Yeah. So Blender is one of the coolest, I guess you could say, because it's also a popular one. So I don't think it will ever go to the private sector, because the amount of code invested by everyone, in there is so much that they could never make it private. If they would make it private, then that means that everyone who holds a piece of code over there would just rip it out and say no. So it will make the project a mess, and it would say goodbye to the project, in a sense. Also, many companies, not only one company, have invested in this software. So
all right. So what are some takeaways for people to know about open source software and the public having access to it?
Takeaways of having access.
Like takeaway we discussed, takeaway of the discussion and stuff like that.
They should always use them, and always promote open source. Because, imagine you have your Adobe systems, Adobe Photoshop, right? Now, if you look at the Adobe, it's pretty simple, and it's quite annoying with its payment. You know how much it costs? It's too much. The subscription method is kind of annoying, and it's probably the worst in the history. But I think there could be another worse one, where you gotcha your way to acquire a subscription. That will be a worse system. In a sense, the problem with Adobe Photoshop is that people cannot improve it. Even if they want to, they couldn't improve it. There's so many features asked to by users, but they aren't doing. I don't know why. We will never maybe know. But let's say there's an open source form, of Adobe Photoshop, in a sense, or any other Adobe system thing, software. And imagine if you had the same clone of that software, and you could propose an idea to somebody, I guess, create an issue on on their, I guess, development page, you could put an issue, and ask for that feature. And if somebody wants to implement it, or you yourself want to implement it, you could just do it. That would be really cool. Yeah, because there's so much advantages to open source. But yeah, the main disadvantage is just it's way too complicated to maintain that project in a sense. It's like being, I don't know, having a hive mind in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you as a programmer, have you used open source to help with your projects in programming?
Yeah, I always use those. And usually I if I see an open source software, right, I prefer to use that one because I know that nobody will actually sneak in some malicious code or to steal my data or steal my information or try to steal my computer's processing power for their use cases. You know, like example is Windows using your PC to steal your data with telemetry. You know, it's like they use your CPU power, right? Which you don't want to usually for them to use. They use it to send out data. It's like, bro, why are you using my PC? What the hell? What's the point of me having my PC when somebody else uses it for me? That's kind of bullshit.
All right.
So usually, I prefer to use
to make open source software for other people.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
Do you feel like you can ever get to the point that you can create open source software in your own capacity and let people use that software?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite hard to develop open source because there's the competition there is very big in a sense. Because I mean, if I would have a good idea, right, and had some good knowledge of that said language and field, then yeah, I would actually try to go for it. Yeah,
true.
Because usually, like when you start a project, you like start it, yeah. Then you have to find people that want to help you in that project, right? I mean, you could also develop it by yourself and waste a few years on developing it and wait for the recognition to come. But yeah, usually if something is already open source, then that means your stuff was already implemented. But I guess I could always take somebody's project and improve it. Yeah, that's also a way of open source. Yeah, I mean,
true.
Yeah, I could actually do it. It depends on the project. If I see a fun project, I could go into it and continue.
All right. Yeah. And in open source, do you believe the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, or the advantages outweigh the disadvantages?
So I believe that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages by a lot. Because like imagine you have freedom of expression, yeah, over everything you want to do if you're skilled enough. It's like competition at its finest. If you're skilled enough, you can do everything you want to do with that thing, with that software. But with like, let's say if you go with the private one, you know, the private software, you can't modify it, you can't do anything. I mean, you could modify it, but that's called hacking already. And yeah, you know, hacking and cracking, and usually those kind of end up in the same spectrum as piracy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's advantages by a lot, because there's no way you could say that you would prefer communism, or I mean not communism. What's it called? There's no way you would prefer the having a monarch over a democratic society, unless you're up to that. I don't know. Would you want to be under, I don't know, Kim Jong-un? I'm joking. Yeah, I guess you can see like the idea. It's like having one leader versus many leaders.
True, I don't mind with that. You know, we have a lot of different things going on and how it sounds.
Having more ideas helps everything, helps the project like prosper in a better way. If there's one single idea, it will go well up until a point.
True.
The only problem is like it will take a long time to get to the right design.
True. And as we close up this episode about coding, the open source software, and the public sector, what is one thing you want to say in the closing arguments that we're doing today?
One thing. So I always use open source software. I always try to search for it because, don't usually go to the easiest way to find a already made software, I don't know, I guess Adobe. Don't go to the easy stuff. Try the hard way. Find an open source software. Try to use it. Try to learn it. And support the developers, because who knows, maybe that software will end up even better than the private one.
Yeah, I agree. With open source software, we have different opportunities for people to see how it works, how it translates to the utility of it. Different projects can take it, adapt to a modified version. With the public sector having the access that we do in the way that we do it, I do believe that we're going into a new method of taking data, turning it into a modified version. Give credit to the creator of the open source software. It'll be amazing to see how much recognition they can get by being a part of your project, because that actually gives the developer of the open source software that project used, or that particular person, and actually a leg up. They get the search engine optimization they want. They benefit from recognition of people perceiving the product really well. It does a good job. And at its core, open source software represents a good niche of the market in data processing, in intellectual property, and other areas relating to projects benefiting from such a means to a better product. That's what I think open source represents.
Yeah, that's also a good way of explaining.
So, as we wrap up this episode of open source software in the public sector, where can they find you, Mac? Specifically you, where they can find you, because if they like your correspondence about the open source software, programming, all of that, where can they reach you?
They could always meet me on Discord. I usually just hang around there. What they I could actually give them the code of my account. I guess it's. I think you could actually put it in the description. That would be even better, no? For them to be able to find me.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, because that way is easier to find people. I usually just hang around. I guess Duelist Tonight. I don't know. Pros. Project Ignis server as well, and the custom cards, another one. I just like to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Fun fact, it's an open source software, so anyone can just change it, modify it, and make its own version, which is actually the Yu-Gi-Oh! Omega. It was first open source. It decided to become closed source. Yeah, because of some stuff. I don't remember why. But yeah, it was open source. So the same underneath, it's the same software. It's just remade in a different way. So yeah,
true.
That's fine. So yeah, you can find me there, and my name is Ari, hashtag 4714 on Discord. It's gonna be in the description, I think. But yeah.
All right.
I don't hang around many places, but yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that wraps up this episode of MC Anime with the open source software and the public sector. Do not forget you can find us on podcast directories near you: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, we're on www.mcanimepodcast.com, and that's MCANIMEPODCAST.com, and we're at the MC Animators on Patreon. You can vote for your favorite podcasts, ideas, sponsorships, and more if you support us in the crowdfunding on the different tiers. Thank you for Mac for being here, how you came here and actually been a good correspondent in this process.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, guys, this wraps up this episode. I wish you guys luck. Hope it doesn't go too well, but if it does go too well, more the merrier, that I say. Bye, guys.
This concludes another episode of MC Anime Podcast. MC Anime Podcast is available on podcast directories like Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. We also have our website at mcanimepodcast.com. If you want to directly support us, then follow Patreon blog MC Anime. Finally, if you want services for hire, then we're available on Fiverr for audio and video production, graphic design, idea consulting, and blog and article writing.